Golden Doves class 200. We are on page 121. We were discussing the difference between semiotic reading, where the goal is to passively, not to interact with the text, but rather to use the text to get to the mind of the author and get to the original meaning of the text. And then we said there is semantic reading, which is where the reader basically is now the recipient of the text. And as the recipient of the text, the reader has a right to interact with the text and try to interpret the text. So he deals exclusively with the text. He doesn't try to go to the mind of the author, right? So, page 121 again. By excluding the vowels from the text of the scripture. Interesting. If you put the vowel in the Sefer Torah, it's pasul, right? So, therefore, we see that vowels are specifically excluded from writing, right? Why? Hebrew tradition was in fact excluding semiotic reading because a vowel tells you, and this is how to read the text. We want you to get to the original authorial intent. So we exclude vowels. It was also excluding parasitic exegesis, the type of static reading peculiar to the readerly text discussed so brilliantly by Barthes. So first of all, Barthes, I don't know where Barthes discusses that, but let me just point out what my father means by parasitic exegesis. Parasitic exegesis is exegesis which is meant to replace the text, so that instead of confronting the text directly, you confront the text through the peculiar exegesis. So a great example is Rashi. Not that Rashi did something wrong, but they use Rashi as a way to avoid interacting with the text. So now, let me just check what is meant by this phrase in Roland Barthes. Again, the readerly text. Okay. Okay, so yes, in the readerly text, so first of all, Roland Barthes was a French literary theorist, and he actually makes a distinction between a readerly text, right, and a writerly text, right? So the readerly text is more traditional and passive, where the reader is basically supposed to consume the text, right? And he's not supposed to challenge or interact with the text, right? So, for example, in the readerly text, you have a more conventional narrative structure where the meaning is clear, and the text assigns a passive role to the reader. So any text which is vocalized automatically assigns a passive role to the reader. So in a readerly text, the reader, the primary role of the reader is to absorb the meaning that the author intended, right? That's a readerly text, right? So any traditional essay, any classical novel, but then you have the writerly text. And the writerly text, it encourages the active participation of the reader. So how is a text a writerly text? Well, it can be a writerly text when there's some ambiguous elements in the text, right? Like multiple meanings. So for example, we have keri uchtiv, right? Interesting. So this is an invitation to the reader to co-create the meaning with the text itself, right? Okay. The obvious example of a writerly text is a text that doesn't have vowels. It is hardly possible to conceive a more unreadable text than one made exclusively of consonants. Exactly, as my father just writes here. The same distinction applies to the commentaries on the book. A commentary may be an anesthetic, right? It anesthesias, what's the word? It has an anesthetic effect on the mind, I guess. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Its object is to make the text readable. So all these things, sometimes you have what is that? Scroll, art scroll. It's nice. Okay, I got it. It's nice, but these types of explanations are meant to avoid Talmud Torah. The point of the Torah was that it's a writerly text and that you should interact. They can't even read, most of the people studying. I mean, I'm not against art scroll. It's useful. Anyway, but it's an anesthetic. It presupposes literary innocence on the part of the reader, right? Of course. Well, if you're ignorant, you're innocent. The explanations are designed to act as a soporific. That's the word I was looking for. The anesthesia is a soporific, whereby the reader surrenders his own criteria to that of the author and becomes totally passive. The unreadable type of commentary presupposes total alertness. So you have a commentary like Art Scroll where the purpose is to act as a soporific. Don't really interact with the text. Don't have that struggle, right? So Art Scroll makes your text completely readable. It transforms your writerly text of the Chumash to a readable text of Art Scroll. Okay. The unreadable type of commentary presupposes total alertness. Then you have commentaries like Radak, for example. The purpose of Radak is not to supplant the text, it's to give you the tools to interact with the text. And in order to understand Radak, you have to be very alert. Its object is to point out hitherto unforeseen possibilities in the text, to formulate new alternatives by further perforating the original, and thus raise the level of perplexity. Obviously, the great master of this type of unreadable commentary is the Moneh Nebuchim. It's exactly what the Moneh Nebuchim does. This type of commentary bears no resemblance whatsoever to the original. It requires superior erudition and scholarly sophistication merely to note in what way it is actually expounding the original. That's a good commentary, is when the connection between the original text and the commentary is not obvious. You need to bridge that connection. You need to see that in the words. Consider, for example, the Mishnah and the Talmud, the most authoritative compilations of the oral law. Traditionally, they were considered the official pirush, commentary of the Torah. Excuse me, footnote to 121. So, right. All right. All right. It is a remarkable fact that they bear absolutely no resemblance at all to the Torah in either structure, language, or style. Okay, that's a that's the example. That was the correct example, not the example I brought before, Radak. But the relationship between the Mishnah, which is Torah Shebe'al Peh, and the Torah Shebichtav, where the Mishnah is a perush on the Torah Shebichtav, you don't see any perush. Where's the perush? But that's the idea. All right. We'll stop here.